And I think a lot of these girls, they're thinking, well, no, I mean, I'm not mean to him. I just don't like him. And it's like, well, that's still causing harm because women are very intuitive, very discerning, and we know when we're being tolerated and not celebrated.
Hey, friends, and welcome back to this season of The Mary Moran Show. If you're just joining us, this is a season we are lovingly referring to as the underestimated season after the title of my third book, which just released this year called Underestimated: The Surprisingly Simple Shift to Quit Playing Small, Name the Fear, and Move Forward Anyway. So, all this season, we are actually, which we're now officially extending all the way through 2025. I am being joined by some amazing guests, some all time favorite past guests, and some brand new ones as we sit down and have the deep, hard conversations we love to have around here about all the different phases of fear I cover in the book. Things like procrastination, people pleasing, imposter syndrome, self sabotage, second guessing, perfectionism, and more. And today I couldn't be more excited to be joined by a new friend. As of today, we now know second time USA Today bestselling author Natalie Runion as we talk about comparison, competitiveness, and shrinking ourselves down so that others don't feel intimidated. There's that big word we're going to talk about. And then we dig into her brand new book, USA Today best-selling book, I Don't Even Like Women and Other Lies That Get in the Way of Sacred Sisterhood. Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for having me.
How are you feeling? We just got the news.
Oh,
USA Today.
it's amazing. And I don't care what anybody tells you, no matter how many books you've written, it is just amazing to know that something was put out there that has already traveled so far in such a short amount of time. So I never take it for granted. I never assume anything. I actually woke up this morning with zero expectation, but just so grateful for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Well, a huge congratulations, a huge, huge, huge congratulations. That is a very, very big deal, and I think it's just like you said, it's like the nice large, I mean, you didn't say this, I'm gonna say this, but I think you'll agree, a nice large pebble that sends out a lot more ripple effects, right?
Yeah.
It's that first big splash, which is incredible. You say that this book isn't my attempt to call us into one giant slumber party of braiding each other's hair and telling deep dark secrets, but rather it is an invitation to be our sister's keeper. And I love that, but I also just want to tell you, if you ever do want to host that slumber party with the braiding of the hair and the scary movies and the ice cream, I'm so there. I'm so there. Uh,
I actually am too. I miss those
yeah,
days.
me too. I was actually just at an author retreat in Alabama. We were in Orange Beach, Alabama, and it was such a rare breath of fresh air because nobody was, being sort of like queen bees, which we'll talk about a lot. Nobody was trying to like take control. Nobody was breaking off from the group and having like smaller, inner, uh, you know, cool kids tables within the group. And the last night we were there, we all just randomly, without no plan, ended up on this big U-shaped couch watching 10 Things I Hate About You. And we're all laughing at the same parts and like, pausing it to talk about like, oh my gosh, like the 90s and the 2000s and what it was like to be in high school back then. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I've had this since like college, this just like girls sitting around watching a rom-com together. And it made me like really want that and also really sad. And you talk in the book, like we are wired to want this.
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons we say we don't like women is because we feel like we truly are missing it. And we've almost villainized women because we have felt the lack, we felt the loss, we have felt the rejection of why can't I find these women in my life in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and up, where I can kind of capture a little bit of that innocence of friendship without all of the drama that has maybe followed it in the past. And so I think there's a longing for that, but it's easier to villainize women than to be vulnerable and to say, I want it, I miss it, but I don't know how to get it.
Right, right, and we're gonna get into a lot of this, but there is a lot of that, like, I've been burned before, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, I think is how that goes. Okay, so let's talk about this. I wanna jump right in. The whole book is about different scripts that we end up believing about women, and the number one script actually becomes the title of the book, which made me laugh out loud because I feel like we've all maybe said it at one time or another, like, "I don't even like women." And you actually found yourself uttering these words to your pastor, which is, an uncomfortable place to be. And this happened when you were offered a promotion, which is an unlikely time to say that. So drop us right in the middle of that scene. What on earth was going on that made you say that so unexpectedly to somebody you probably didn't want to say it to?
I had been a worship leader for 20 plus years. And so I was always working with men and women. And we had just moved my family 1,000 miles away for me to be a worship pastor. So I had in my head, I'm going to be a worship pastor for the next 10 years. And so when that call came and they acted like it was a promotion, which I do see now that it is, but at the time it felt like a demotion. And this pastor looks at me and says, "We think you're a great worship leader, but we really believe you have a teaching gift, and we'd like to invite you to be our women's pastor." And I can remember just the floor kind of dropping out from underneath me because I loved being a worship pastor and I
Mhm.
didn't think I had a teaching gift. So, okay, God, you told them this. Why didn't you tell me this? And so I just explode in the room. I should have been fired, honestly, because I literally was like, I don't even like women. Like, why would you do this? Send me to the children. Send me to, the clean toilets, but don't make me do women's ministry. And I think that for me, I had grown up in such a denomination where women's ministry was weird. I mean, they would do foot washing services and women kept their pantyhose on. You know,
I
there
died when I read that part.
I mean, it was tea parties and fake flowers, and I had to go. I was a pastor's kid. I always had to be at all of those things. A lot of finger sandwiches, just
Yeah,
very kind of fluffy stuff.
yeah.
And it was cool over the time that I was with those women. I ended up being with them collectively 6 years, but just really in that time, the Lord showed me that He didn't need me to pastor them; He needed them to pastor me, and that's exactly what they did.
Wow, that's so good. I have had that experience where I volunteered to speak at a conference, like, nominated myself to speak at a conference. So let me just give the backstory on that because that sounds very, arrogant. I was a photographer. A photographer friend of mine was putting on a Christian creative conference. She wasn't sure at that time where I was with my faith, so she didn't think to invite me. I saw that she needed speakers, so I was like, "Hey, I speak. I can do this." Show up there thinking I'm there to help, and the whole thing was for me, to be, just so changed, so deep into my faith. I didn't even know what worship was at that time. They said we were gonna do an hour of worship, and I thought it was a sermon, so people start standing up and raising their hands, and I'm like T-Rex arms in the back, like, "What's happening?" So I super love that. I definitely know that feeling of just being taken places we do not wanna be because it is for us. And you say, like, speaking about that moment with your pastor, that you actually had spent years people pleasing and saying what you thought people wanted to hear to get out of awkward situations, but now your honest words were hanging in the air and they couldn't be taken back. And I just want to kind of, even in that story, we're going to bounce forward a month. You're a month into the job and you have this really powerful exchange with a friend of yours. And so this is one of those times here on this show, Natalie, you don't know this, but you're about to find out. We will sometimes do sort of a meta moment, Zach Morris TV timeout, break the fourth wall, in appreciation of really good writing. Normally it comes much later in the episode, and so we're doing it right up front. So that's number one. And number two, I think this is the first time in the history of the show that I've got 2 points to talk about with just in this one small story of like just the strategy of really good writing. We have a lot of people who listen to this show who want to be authors, who are, writing on blogs and things like that. And so I'm going to read this passage, and then I have 2 things I want to ask you about just from a perspective of really good writing. You say, "My friend joins me in the sound booth as the room fills to capacity, and I feel her shoulder touch mine. I'm still not emotionally prepared for anyone to say anything serious, so I turn to say something off topic, and her eyes are wide, tears holding on to her eyelashes for dear life before one finally hits the top of her cheek. She lowers her voice into a hushed whisper, barely moving her mouth in case there are any professional lip readers in the room. Natalie, what if they do this to me? What if they send me here to do this with you? I can't be sent to women's ministry too." And she says this as if women's ministry is one level above the dark abyss of hell. You go on. "In our 30 some years on the planet, we had not only read and believed the scripts that women were mean, we had seen it with our own eyes. Mean girls grew up to be mean women. Gossip girls grew up to be women who would drag your name through the mud. We're surrounded now by neutral, puffy vests, Karen haircuts, and laughter that in our present mood we perceive as more cackling than good natured. Holding on to each other tightly, we realize we are in the belly of the beast. So good, so good. And so the first question that I have for you, just from like a I teach a writing course, so just from kind of like the art of writing side of things, is this is such a beautiful example of using kind of like a little bit of tongue in cheek hyperbole, sort of exaggerating the emotions that you were feeling to sort of allow the reader to actually, like, if you kind of stretch it so far beyond the feeling that it sort of snaps back and allows them to feel the feeling that they actually would in a situation like that.
Mhm.
And so, when you were kind of writing, and I'll just give it one more sort of like an analogy there. In philosophy, we talk about to understand the strength of an argument, take it to the extremes, and however close it can get to the extreme before it falls apart is how strong the argument is. And so, like, maybe it's not quite this abyss of hell or the belly of the beast, but it doesn't feel that far off either, you know? So, like, just talk about when you were writing that, just any of the strategy you were thinking in your head of, I'm just going to actually turn the volume up on how bad this feels.
I had 2 thoughts in this process of writing this book. My other 2 books are very cerebral and almost testimonial, and I
Mm,
think that for the church, that's very normal. When we read nonfiction as Christians, we're used to getting the bottom line, we're used to getting the scriptures to back it up, maybe some personal, like, stories or stories of people we know, and there's sort of an algorithm, I think, that a lot of Christian writers follow that is safe because it's worked. And I stuck with that for my first 2 books, mostly to earn equity with my reader, to trust that I wasn't going to take them on emotional rabbit holes that were going to be too allegorical or too metaphorical that they couldn't get to the actual message of the book. So with this one, first of all, I knew I was writing a women's book, which there are thousands upon thousands of women's books.
mm.
And I knew that I needed to write it in a way that was so brutally honest that someone finally was thinking, okay, somebody gets me. And I had written this entire book without those first sections of those chapters. And then I did what every good writer should do. I started picking up biographies and autobiographies of some of my favorite actors and actresses. And I started watching what they did that was different from the Christian market. And something that they do is they tell these stories in a first person style that brings the reader into them in real time and says, this is literally what I was feeling if you put a microscope on my heart. And it wasn't until my third round of edits that I added those little sections of every chapter. And I
Wow.
knew it was a risk because it broke
Yeah,
the
paid off.
Christian mold. It broke the Christian author mold 100%, and it was absolutely worth the risk.
Love it. Love it. Well, okay, so the second question kind of goes along with that. You're very also skillfully tapping into some very ingrained imagery we have of women being dangerous in groups. We have the neutral vests, which immediately made me think of that meme. Oh, look, it's Han Solo season again. Have you seen that?
So
the navy vests and the boots or whatever, the cream color tops. And 2, the Karen haircut. And so just talk a little bit about tapping into stereotypes and scripts of women, kind of to, like, reveal some of the reader's preconceived biases of those scripts and those stereotypes that were like, "Oh, yeah, we instantly know what you're talking about."
So it's important to involve cultural iconic things that are happening. And unfortunately, if you are named Karen, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That is a culturally iconic kind of conversation around the Karens. And so
Mhm.
that was something that was kind of like a low hanging opportunity to tie in multiple generations into this one chapter. And then the vest and the puffy coats and all of those things, again, is a cultural thing that in 5 or 10 years, women may not be wearing cultural puffy vests, but we'll still be talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think it also fed into the lie, again, that somebody could have a haircut or have a certain way that they dressed and be lumped into a negative group of women when really they're quite lovely, they're amazing, they're not those stereotypes, and why it's so important to be able to bust past those to actually get to know the person under that haircut or under that vest. And so it was a nod to the lie without actually saying it's a lie.
Right? So good. So good. So good and so effective. And let's keep digging into this idea of the scripts because for you, you talk about how this started really early. For a lot of us, it starts really early. You say, even as a child and teenager, my friend groups consisted of mostly guys. I attended public high school in the 90s where mean girls ruled, skinny girls thrived, and I felt invisible. And then you go on, in the local church where sisterhood should be safe, I learned self preservation as a life preserver. Public high school was child's play compared to what I would endure under the watchful eyes of women who would see me as their competition rather than their collaborator. My junior high cafeteria, sectioned off by social class, wasn't nearly as cutthroat as some of the women I would meet on the evangelical streets, each with their own versions of "you can't sit here" and attempts to keep queen bees in positions and their hives under control. And I love that it went there at the end because I was already picturing that watering hole scene from Mean Girls when you were talking about the different tables being sectioned off. And it's just sort of like we're fighting for resources. Everything feels scarce. Like we have to see each other as an enemy of the things we're trying to accomplish, achieve, rack up in our lives. And you say it wasn't that I didn't like women; it was that I often felt rejected by women. Talk about that, like in this unexpected place of the church where we're supposed to be loving our neighbors, we're supposed to be making people feel welcome. What do you think specifically in terms of the watering hole imagery? What scarce resources are being fought over specifically in the church among women?
When we look at the church like a giant cafeteria table, you have the obvious seats. You have women's ministry, you have kids ministry, you might have greeters, you might have the coffee makers, the administrators. Those cafeteria tables are just very generous with seats for women. You start getting into tables where it's administrative, executive, pastor, leader, head worship leader, who gets to sing the alto part of this really cool song next to the rock star worship leader, even down to where you went to college, because in Christian tribalism of, did you go to ORU, did you go to Lee, did you go to Liberty, like there's these sections, and the minute you walk into a church, those tables are there, not spoken about, but they're there. And a lot of times women just kind of deduct, oh, I'm just going to go to the women's table, just go to the kids' table, which is why I say it's really dangerous to assume that a pastor's wife even wants to lead women's ministry because she may not feel called to that. She may be a
Yeah.
preacher, teacher. And so you get to these tables where it's a lot more selective. There's more men around those tables, and there's one seat for a woman to sit on an executive board, or
Hmm.
one seat for a woman to get to sing the song,
Yeah.
or to be part of that vote. And now it's every woman for herself. Now it's
Mm.
who can outdo, outjockey, outperform to land that one seat. And this is why it's important for our brothers in leadership to understand that part of the way that we can kind of keep this from happening is by opening up our tables in those more male dominated spaces to women who have merited it. It's earned, and to show that it's not to be competed for, but to be collaborated with. And so that's what I'm seeing in the church is we've kind of put ourselves at these tables voluntarily and involuntarily, but it's also something that can be worked on collectively between brothers and sisters.
Love that so much. I was really surprised in the book when you were talking about this idea of aging out of different like, I mean, in hindsight, now that I know that information, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that makes a ton of sense," when we know that there are sort of old ways of thinking, but to that you would have to age out of certain ministries and, like, you basically said I had to take the women's ministry position or leave
Yeah, it was it.
serving altogether.
There is such a Gen Z movement right now that I love. I love the Gen Z movement. We absolutely should be empowering the next generations to lead the church, but we cannot allow other generations to become extinct because we want our platforms to look hip or
Right.
like we've got some sort of revival happening, when the only reason that you and I are still here is because there were women above us and other generations who led us, held us accountable, didn't let us act like fools.
Yeah.
And if we start removing, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers from the lives of these Gen Z leaders, we're going to have a youth group running our churches. I mean, let's be real, our frontal lobes don't even form until we're 25. The
Right?
frontal lobe is for decision making, conflict, big things that happen in the church every single day. We don't need children leading children. So for women especially, the scriptures tell us that we have a lot of pastors, but we don't have a lot of fathers. And I would
Hmm.
say that's the same. We don't have a lot of mothers. And if you start removing the mothers from the daughters, you're going to have a bunch of teenagers trying to do something that they're not even equipped to do yet. And so I do think it's sad that as women, we have to worry that the minute we hit 40 years old, that our time on a platform having influence is done and we're going to be deduced to behind the scenes admin work. And it should be something that pastors are aware of that they're doing if they haven't already taken note of it.
Yeah, oof, that's good. That's really good. One of the things I saw, I wanted to talk to you about is this is in, sort of the church should be the safe place, but it actually was just as brutal or as watering hole as high school was. I took a screenshot of a Threads post yesterday that said some of the meanest girls you'll ever meet have the fake, overly wholesome public personas. And I felt that in my wisdom teeth when I read it. I feel like I've lived that, Natalie. I wrote in my notes like vipers that say the most backhanded thing possible with the sweetest little accent you ever did hear. you know, and I think that's the hardest part because if somebody's just mean and you sort of know they're mean and they're mean, that's one level of hurt. But if somebody makes you feel like you thought you were friends or you feel like you're welcome or you feel like you're at that table and then oh, so you agree that you're pretty, like that kind of energy. As I'm super wearing pink on a Wednesday, I just
You
realized.
are. I would have totally joined you if I would have known this.
It was not intentional, but maybe subconscious. That's hilarious. Um, there you go. But yeah, like this it's the smiling, it's the bless your
Mhm.
heart kind of thing. It's the bless your cotton socks, whatever. So I don't know. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I just took that screenshot and I was like, "Oh, that was perfect timing for this episode."
This is a perfect example of how Christians get through this loophole of saying, well, God says that the greatest command is that we love God and love people. Of course, I love people. This is the difference between loving someone because we're obligated to do it as believers and truly liking them, which is why I say in the book, I don't just love you,
Mm,
I really like you. Because as Christians, we're called to love and we know it's a command. So we're kind of held to that. And I think a lot of these girls, they're thinking, well, no, I mean, I'm not mean to him. I just don't like him. And it's like, well, that's still causing harm because women are very intuitive, very discerning, and we know when we're being tolerated and not celebrated.
oof. Well, we're just gonna let that hang in the air for a second. Yeah. Tolerated, not celebrated. That's really good. That's for somebody, that might be for me. You also talk about you mentioned, God really likes you. God really likes women. And in the book you say, God began to break my heart for his daughters because he really likes women. He doesn't just like us, he adores us, loves us, cherishes us, and celebrates us. And I wrote in my notes, like, I think a lot of people who are on the outside of faith, who are not in a Christian bubble, who only sort of see it as like a caricature of itself, would be really surprised by that statement. That I don't know that right now the church is super being known for loving women well.
It's true, and it's because our actions aren't matching up to our language. It's like, well,
Yeah.
prove it. Like, how are you loving women? Are you creating programs and different ministries for single moms and for the widow? Are you stepping in and working with the orphans? Are we doing things in our churches that empower and encourage women to lead at higher levels of leadership if they have a gift of speaking or preaching or singing or leading or writing curriculum or sitting down and being at hospital beds? Are we really creating atmospheres where when women walk in, they see that they are just as important as the men that are in the room? And I'm not talking about titles. I'm not talking about every woman has to have a pastor title or whatever. I'm just saying, do women feel valued?
Yeah.
Not just by the sisters that are around them, but by their brothers. Are men in the church seeing what the daughters carry and saying, that's good and we need that at this house?
That leads me into my next question really nicely, which is I saw that you wrote in the book that, when it came time to do the cover design for your first book, You had asked the publisher not to use any pink or flowers on the cover because you didn't want to be stereotyped or lumped in with all the sort of other women Christian authors at the time who were following that algorithm you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, this, formula for how to do it well or how to be successful. And we went through something very, very similar with my third book, Underestimated. Let me see if I have them right here. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm saying this as somebody who my second book was pink by request. Pink is, in fact, Shelby style, my signature color, blush and bashful. But for the third book, which is much more a thought leader book, um, we wanted it to be I wanted it to be, and I said in my TPQ for everybody listening at home, that's a titling and positioning questionnaire where you get to make all your requests about the cover and the title. I said nothing that makes it feel like it's just for the girls, for the little women, for the little ladies, that this could be a book that could be picked up by men or women. And the first mock-ups that did come back were in fact pink and purple at times. And I was like, whoa. And I think it was just they had missed it on the form, not that they were deliberately ignoring it. But I super understand that feeling. And I didn't even plan on talking about any of this, but like I saw my friend Cass Spear post this recently of like if you feel like you're you don't quite fit anywhere. You're like too intelligent for the emotional crew. You're too you fall too far to left of like the super conservatives and too far to right of the super progressives, whatever the case may be. Like you feel like you never belong and you feel like in order to belong you have to change everything about you
Mhm.
in order to fit the mold. And you say that, this book is not to make us a bunch of exclusive kind of Christian sororities. It's to form a kingdom army.
Mhm.
So I guess just talk for a little bit about that pressure to fit in, that pressure to do it a certain way, and why the army is actually the strongest
Mhm.
when we're each showing up the way we were made.
To speak to the creative or to the writer, this is why it's really important that we know who we are. And this is also why I don't recommend that we write books when we're 23, 24, unless we're writing to people who are under 23 or 24 and have
Hmm.
lived some life that we've actually already lived. Um, because if we don't know who we are, we'll easily be persuaded for followers, for a deal, for money to compromise who we are as creators. And it would have been really easy just to said, okay, you guys tell me what to do, you're the experts. But because I was 43 when my first book came out, I had lived,
Yes. I was 40. Yes.
I mean, the 40s
Yes.
are a great time. I had grown in my identity in Christ and saying, I
Yeah.
know who I am, and Raised to Stay and The House That Jesus Built were two books that I really felt that our men pastors, our male pastors also needed to pick up. And if there was going to be a flower on it or pink, they were less likely to carry that around in the airport or, when they're
Right.
in their office. And so I didn't want to be pigeonholed. And I think a lot of women fear this in the church, that if they start their ministries in a woman centric role, that they're going to be stuck there. And I believed that. I believed, and I still kind of believe it. You very rarely see women get out of that once they're in it. And so even for this book, I said, I don't even want the cover to look like a flowery thing. I want it to feel cultural, like a Judy Bloom cover. That
Yes, I
all of
totally see that.
that our Gen
Yes.
X, and what's crazy is that men are picking up this book because they're
Hmm.
saying, I don't even know what the plot of this book is, but I'm getting it just because I want to know why you don't like women. And maybe it's going to help me lead the women that I'm leading. And I do think that you and I, like, we're in a unique space because I do think our generation is breaking out of some of these molds, of these stereotypes, but we're really having to till up some ground to make a way for the future authors, female authors, to come up and not be afraid that if they write one woman centric book that they're going to be stuck writing books for women the rest of their lives.
Right, right. Oh, that's good. I wanna kinda zone in on the sorority imagery there. I have been talking about for, like, the last few years, but, actually about the if I really had to put a pinpoint on it, I'd say the last 10 years. But the last couple of years in particular, it's come up this idea of, like, the Christian sorority girls, and I have always felt more called to speak to the people who feel like they're on the outside of faith, and they're like, "I'm really curious about your God, but wow, your Christian circles make me real nervous. I don't know about this." And one of the things that I kinda talk about is, like, the defining and, like, this is very tongue in cheek, everybody listening, nobody get offended, it's just a joke. But it's like that open mouth, I'm laughing, but I'm smiling, like, I don't know how to smile if I'm not, like, laughing, and I'm like, I every time I try to do that, Natalie, I just look like I'm about to throw up, like, I don't know what that is. Do they teach them how to do that at 12? Like, what is that half laugh smile? I don't know. And I say all of that because it's like, even writing Christian books and speaking at Christian conferences, I always walk in and feel like, well, there's the table, it's firmly established, and I'll just be over here, thinking about especially an Enneagram 4, I'll be thinking about the bitter and the melancholy while you guys are talking about laughing and fall boots or whatever, I don't
Right.
know. Yeah. So in the name of that, I've just pulled like a couple paragraphs from my first book, Dirt, that I thought you would
Right.
appreciate based on our conversations about these fluffy, floral Christian conferences where we don't feel like we belong. I remember the first time I decided to try to put on more joy, as if joy was a perfume sample I tried on briefly at the mall and liked so much how it made me feel to walk into a room smelling like distilled righteousness that I decided to buy a travel size so I could carry it with me at all times. An easy application for a quick cover up, a potent enough aroma of pep in my step to cover all manner of bad days. I could even picture the poster advertising this perfume. It hung above a metal rack stacked full of bow tied gift sets. For a limited time only, buy this joy perfume and get a companion pack of prosperity and peace for free. Plus, this random canvas tote bag, which I would inevitably take home and hang on the handle of my closet door along with the other 20 random canvas tote bags I already own. In the poster, some actress whose movies I've never seen sits in a puffy dress in the middle of a half laugh in the middle of a field of pink wildflowers. Except there's nothing wild about them at all. Every single one is a forced bloom from a temperature controlled greenhouse, beautiful roses in every shade and variety, as long as they are all pale pink, planted in fake floral foam, not even real dirt. For a while there, it felt like everywhere I turned, I was running into this message that in order to be a good Christian, we needed to walk into every room and overpower people with the smell of our joy. It would be even better, these messages screamed at me, if they could smell it before they even saw us coming. Like Abercrombie in the mall, if we could have forced hot air vents pumping out the fragrance of our faith, amplifying it to every passerby, then we would surely draw more people in.
Mm.
So I just felt like you would appreciate that and maybe just speak to if you have felt that in any, environments you've been in.
Well, that is beautiful writing. I just
Thank
want to
you.
say that is
Thank you.
lovely. As a writer, I enjoy hearing just crisp, clear allegory, metaphorical words. So love it.
Thank
Um,
you.
I think that what women are looking for is just what you're talking about, which is a vulnerable, honest encounter, not just with the Lord when we're in these places where we're supposed to just fit the mold,
Yeah.
but we're looking for authentic sisterhood that doesn't fit the mold. As a matter of fact, we want to break that mold. And it's very taboo and almost rebellious to not come in with the joyful laugh and the half smile. It's so countercultural to be able to stop what we're doing in the moment and really see people for who they are and acknowledge brokenness in the middle of the joy, to acknowledge sorrow. I was just at a women's conference and women were laughing and having a great time, and I look over and there's a woman on her knees being prayed for by little girls, and her daughter had just passed away. And to see a woman in lament and mourning while simultaneously women are laughing and doing what they do, it was such a juxtaposition. It was such an opposite thing for me to experience because I realized like this is what life is. We're walking through life and we're supposed to be Instagram ready. And
Yeah.
but there are people who are going through some of the worst days of their life on our best day. And that holy interruption for us to be able to stop in the middle of a conference and pray for a sister, or to not look the part and find the other people who don't look the part. I mean, if you think about a sorority, they're unified on a few things: who your parents are, maybe how much money
Mm.
you have, if you could get through the different challenges and obstacles. The church should not be that. The church should not be tribalized based off of who our parents are, how much money we have, how much we tithe, what we look like. And yet we still oftentimes do section off like that just naturally. It's almost like it's in our bones. So we as women have to fight against that urge to go to people who look like us, sound like us, are having the same season of life as us, and break out of that mold to see change.
Right. Love that. Love that so much. And just to be clear, we're not saying all sororities are like that, but my friend Emily would
No.
want me to say, but Listen,
The stereotype.
Bama TikTok
It's it's the
tells us.
it's the
Yeah.
stereotypes that we can't
Right.
get away
That's
from,
right.
just like the church has the stereotypes that we can't get away
That's
from,
right.
but we can start changing those.
Yeah, let's talk about those scripts even more. You talk about this, and I love this because I speak fluent movie quote and pop culture references, and so this really spoke to me. Every mainstream media has a difficult time creating a realistic image of healthy relationships between women. The heartbreaking reality is that sometimes we simply buy into simple stereotypes because it's too exhausting to work toward anything more, to write our own
Mhm.
scripts. You go on to say, do we actually believe these things, or have they become running scripts in our brains that we didn't write, but were written for us, and we now simply repeat? And so I'm just wondering if you have a theory on who the author of those scripts is. Men, previous women, marketers, or maybe another answer you have.
Well, I would say Hollywood is probably one of the most vocal script writers when it comes
Yeah.
to women. And
Yeah.
we have all been raised in it. I mean, Mean Girls is like the main movie we could talk about, but Gossip Girl, a whole TV series. How many seasons was that? 7, 8 series where, girls were basically exposing each other in a public forum for their own gain. I mean, there are so many examples of even the show Friends, the complicated relationship between Monica and Rachel and Phoebe, and even in real life, them talking about how they had to overcome their own insecurities, even work together on that stage.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we see Hollywood as being sort of this perpetuator of those scripts, as well as the writers and the funders and the people that are putting them out there. And then we as consumers have to decide, am I going to invest into this script?
Yeah.
And as we sit and those things are put in our heads, not just in Hollywood, but through music, and through now TikTok. And now we're seeing people living their lives in their own homes who we should have never even seen. Now, Hollywood isn't just on a big screen. Now is in
Right.
our hand. And so we have all become consumers of these lies, and we're paying for them. We're actually paying for it. So I really see it more even of a uphill battle now than even it was in the 80s and 90s because of all of the Hollywood that we hold, and not just Hollywood, but now our culture. Now everybody's famous, everybody has a platform, and now we're peering into each other's lives and saying, "Ooh, I want that." Or I must not be a good woman if I don't have that, or a good wife if I don't have that, or a good mom if I'm not doing this. So it's for me, it started as a little girl watching TV shows, but also hearing other women speak around me, like my friends' moms.
Yeah.
I had a good mom. I had a mom who spoke life over me my whole life,
Mm,
but I had a lot of moms in my life who weren't my own mom who spoke dangerous scripts over me, and
yeah.
I have learned as a mom of teenage girls now, when those children come through my home, they're going to leave better than they walked in.
Yeah, that's good. I remember in the book, The Hypochondriac Story, and I think we all have, so for those of you who haven't read the book, um, just Natalie being at a summer camp and feeling really, not sure if she fit in, and, just having, like, one of those, like, I don't know, I walked into a space like this a couple days ago, and it's like sometimes I can be super on, and sometimes I'm like, I was just learning to love,
Yeah.
power down. And this mom asked if you were okay, and you say, "Oh, I just have a headache," like, didn't wanna, like, unpack it all, and she called you a hypochondriac just for saying you didn't feel well. And that sticks with you, and I feel like I have stories like that from friends' moms growing up, and I bet everybody listening does, and there's a part at the end of that section where you just talk about every single woman reading this section needs to know the responsibility and the voice you might become in somebody else's head based on these offhand comments.
Mhm. Yeah, we
Yeah,
forget that there's death and life in the power of the tongue, and it's not just with our own biological children or our own
yeah.
friends. It's when we're talking to the barista, when we're at the checkout line at the grocery store, when we get a telemarketer call. Like, we are so quick to use our words to cut, to be short, to make a point, and we forget that there are some scripts that we will speak over each other that will either empower and equip, or they will kill and destroy, and that's a
Mhm.
terrifying responsibility.
I wanna kinda build right off of that. There's a running queen bee imagery throughout the book. And you also talk about this really powerful imagery of Eve in the garden and how Mean Girls now, quote, embrace the roles they perceive will provide power and popularity, allowing them to remain hidden behind the tree while also simultaneously ruling the garden. I thought that was so powerful. That could have been a meta moment in and of itself. So there's our third one of the episode. We're just breaking all the records today. And so where my dark Enneagram 4 brain immediately goes, this is probably going to take us down a rabbit trail we didn't want to go. That's okay. And, just talking about pop culture references, the thing that instantly came to mind for me was like in Handmaid's Tale, right? Where you have like a certain class of woman who's actively taking part in oppressing and injuring a different class of women because at least if they don't have all the power, at least they have some version of power. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, or maybe you just want to bounce back to the garden analogy.
No, I mean,
But I just thought that was really interesting.
I think it's really easy. Let's say the tree is power. I mean, that tree that God told them not to eat from, it carried power and that it was literally going to decide if they were going to live a life sinless or they were now going to live a life of sin. And
Yeah.
we all have a choice as women as to whether or not we're going to eat from a tree that looks like it has everything we need, knowledge, power, fame, but it's all smoke and mirrors. And Satan knew that. Satan knew the minute that we ate from that tree that we were going to lose that communion, that
Mm,
intimacy with the creator. And that was his whole goal, was to separate creation from God. And he was successful. And I think that's been a continual sin for all of us as we have come into, yes, even the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. We still fall short and still grab for the tree, thinking that there's going to be something there for us that God can't give us. And I think for women, we want to hide behind that tree. We might not be picking from it, but we can hide behind it and kind of have this perception of power. But really, we're just being cowards. We still want popularity. We still want identity. And the rest of the women who are free, who have figured out, hey, I don't need a facade. I just need to be who I am. Part of our
mm.
jealousy is I want the freedom she has. I want the security she has. And it has
Wow.
nothing to do with our looks. It has nothing to do with our financial status. It has everything to do with us knowing that we're being posers and we're jealous that somebody else has figured out who they are in Christ.
Wow. That's good. Just gonna let that hang there for a second. That's good. Woo! Well, that leads very, very, very nicely right into my next question. It's almost like we planned this, but we didn't. This is the I just sort of like in my notes I have themes of questions. So this is the sort of idea of like shrinking versus people feeling intimidated, or you being, a person being told that they are intimidating. So the first thing I wrote is like, let's talk about kind of like this over correction based on that. Like when we start to sense that other people are feeling jealous of the freedom or what have you. A label I have sort of dealt with a lot in my life, and I bet you have too, is this idea of being intimidating. Oh, like I didn't come talk to you because I don't know, you're just so intimidating. Or, oh, I went and took this, class from somebody else first because I wanted to work my way up to you, or whatever the case is. And even stepping into the author world, I've been told in several ways and several times in several different ways. I needed to kind of dumb it down, like not have it be so intellectual, like more EQ, less IQ, whatever, in order to have more broad mass appeal. You talk in the book about a situation where you had moved into a new church, I believe, and you weren't really being received by the female staff the way that you'd hoped, and you were assigned a one-on-one mentorship, 6-week mentorship with an emotional intelligence guru, who goes on to tell you that the way you dress, your height, your eye contact, your body language might be causing people to have preconceived notions about you. And so I'm just going to kind of set up the question and then I want to let you riff on it. You say, I quickly learned that simply being a woman would put labels on me I couldn't escape. Many of those imposed labels would create barriers in leading teams, making friends, and doing something as crucial as my job. What I learned at 40 years old was revolutionary for me as a woman who leads others. Emotional intelligence wasn't just managing my own emotions and changing environments and relationships, but also increasing my awareness of the emotions of others as I used social cues to regulate my speech patterns, tone, volume, and means of suggesting change in spaces where I hadn't yet acquired trust. And so, for you, when you think about that and unpack that, what is the difference between using our emotional intelligence? I feel like I have like that 50-50 split between IQ and EQ. So I also have like really high discernment, or can read the body language or whatever. What is the difference between like, ooh, I can sense you're feeling intimidated or out of place or small, and I want to make sure you don't feel that way, versus taking it to the overcorrection of like, I'll just now go ahead and shrink and hide all my gifts and like not do anything that could ever make you feel bad. And in my second book, Slow Growth, we talk about this being like twisting ourselves up into tiny tethered knots and doing back bends until our back breaks. So what's the difference for you?
One thing that I would encourage male pastors to do before we dive into this is when you hire a woman and you say this phrase, I give you permission to lead with the strength that I have entrusted you with. You have to understand that that's different for a man than it is a woman. Because when a woman leads strong and when a man leads strong, two separate things happen. When a man leads strong, he is bold, decisive, passionate, and together and collected. When a woman leads strong, it is perceived as controlling, power hungry, narcissistic. And I would say in the church, I've even heard, not me, but other women described as a Jezebel because
Mm,
she wants power. So when I was hired, it was, I trust you to lead this team with the boldness and authority that I have given you, lead to the strength that God has given you. And for me, as a 5'9" brunette who has been in corporate America leading large corp teams, who has had a lot of responsibility put on my shoulders and many different jobs, I went into that place with a false sense of security that I could lead to the strength that I felt it and not get any support in return.
yeah.
So when we tell women lead to the strength that I have given you, then male pastors, you have to be prepared to support that female leader because there will be people there who have had bad experiences with women who have hurt them, who have truly
Mm,
been narcissistic, power hungry, dare I say, even Jezebel spirit like women, who, when that woman walks in, she's already set up for failure. So
yeah.
for me, I had to go in with a discerning heart once I figured this out and not babysit people's emotions, but be discerning of this situation is going to require much more care than a group meeting for an hour, which meant I had to do a lot more back end work to pastor the women that I was in charge of because now I had to build relational equity. They weren't going to respect me just because I wore a power suit, and was given this title. Now it was, I had to learn that I couldn't be steamrolled or dumb myself down. Decisions still had to be made, expectations still had to be met, but that I needed to be aware that there were times when I was highly emotive. And if I was working out of the flesh, I could do a lot of damage. And so that has been for me in the last 10 years something I've really had to work on is knowing that I can say things to the strength that I feel it and I can call it boldness, but maybe what I'm
Mhm.
actually being is terrifying.
Wow. Okay, so let's go one layer deeper with that last kind of big question in this area. You also talk about the script of "She's just jealous," and that sort of being used to explain why somebody might suddenly turn chilly, or if you end up taking something that somebody else wanted, or what have you. You actually have like a really nuanced answer about "She's just jealous," and we live for nuance here on this show, by the way. And so I have for sure had conversations with my husband where we're like, "Gosh, why will that person just, like, not open up to me? Like, open the door to me, like, be friends with me? Like, why do I always feel like it's like a stiff arm or whatever?" Or like, "What was up with that backhanded compliment or that, like, minimizing statement or, like, whatever?" And so many of the conversations have resulted in this, like, "Well, you're doing things they wanna do," or, like, what have you. And it kinda has boiled down to, like, a there's jealousy at play here. And My q so anyway, I'm gonna kinda let you unpack. You had a situation with your daughter where she's very talented, some female friends, it was becoming really complicated, and you actually say you refuse to say to her, "Oh, don't worry about it, she's just jealous." Unpack that for us of, like, what is the danger of going to that statement?
It's really hard not to say it, number 1, and it's
Yeah.
also really hard not to think it when it's happening to you. But
Right.
what I learned, and my daughter actually taught me this, was once we boiled down to why this one girl in particular was really giving her a hard time, we found out that there was all this family stuff happening behind the scenes. And I realized that Annabelle's light being so bright and shiny, I mean, Annabelle loves Jesus. She doesn't have, she's got her own problems and she's a human teenager. But I realized that as a girl coming from a home that was not broken, who teachers liked her, she was a good athlete, that for this girl, it was just hard to look at my daughter and see what my daughter had and not feel anger or not even maybe even like a sorrow that she didn't have that. And my daughter sort of represented the opposite of what her life was. And we didn't figure that out
Mm,
until much later down the road. But what I decided is I'm never going to tell my daughter somebody is just jealous of them ever again because what that does is it makes my daughter feel guilty for being who God created her to be. And when I think about the things that God has given you, Mary, and like just the little bit of clip that you read to me, you're writing, when I read writing like that, my first thought is, dang, I wish I had written that because it's so good. And the healthy part of me is like, I'm going to be a better writer because I read that. Or if I'm unhealthy, I'm going to say, man, I'm going to outright that, or I'm going to like do it better, right? So we have two parts of our brain depending on how healthy we are in that moment. And when we say that women are jealous, we're really diminishing actually what's happening within that person's life. And we're also telling somebody else, don't be who God called you to be because it's making somebody uncomfortable. And we can't live with that kind of pressure. It's not fair. So we have to continue to be who God made us to be, write how God asks us to write, get on social media, how God says to get on social media, using wisdom and emotional IQ so we don't steamroll people, but
Mm.
also not being who we have been created to be because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Any wisdom there you wanna share if it's like, "Oh, like, I have been willing to have the conversations." You say, "I want my daughter to remain true to who she is without the pressure of constantly thinking other girls see her as a threat. The only way to truly know why a friend had ghosted her, left her out, or said something catty was to be brave enough to ask her to have the conversation." And then we find out, "Oh, there's this other stuff going on." What wisdom do you have for us if we have had the conversations, if the person's listening and said, "Listen, I've given the benefit of the doubt over and over, and no, it really is just coming down to, like, this is somebody who wants to have power or they have unhealed whatever, and it really is a jealousy issue." Like,
Mhm.
what is the wisdom in terms of, protecting an inner circle or, like, when to remove a friend who truly is not for you?
We've also had to have that conversation because I think it's okay to tell people, like, sometimes we don't get to keep going with the same people we started with. And it's not that I'm running better. It doesn't mean that I'm running faster. It just means that our paths are clearly going different directions. And for my emotional health, for my well being, I'm going to have to take a step away from having daily interactions, this is just boundaries, right? We see boundaries throughout the Bible. It's not ghosting, it's communicating. Communication is kindness. It's telling that person, I've really believe we've honed in on a lot of these conversations, and I want to thank you for being vulnerable, and I want to thank you for giving me the time. But for these next couple of months, I'm just going to ask for some space because I really want for you to be able to focus on what you need to focus on, and I'm going to focus on what I'm focusing on, and then you can call me if you need anything. But
Mm,
for this friendship, I believe that right now the best thing for us to do is just to kind of take a moment and breathe. And
yeah.
it's not a cutting off. I think people think boundaries is like ghosting or cutting off. No, it's good to let people know where you are. And they may
Mm,
not be able to be in a healthy place to handle it, but Henry Cloud says this, like, we're not responsible for how people handle us making boundaries. We're just responsible for creating them. And from there, prayerfully, everything will be restored with time. And I have seen that. Now, I've also had people never come back into my life. And again, we just have to give people freedom, but also all of the information. And I think once we've over communicated to a point where we just feel like we're hitting our head up against a rock, that for our own spiritual health, it's okay to say, I tried, I did this biblically, and this person just isn't quite ready to receive that. And so I'm going to give them time to heal so that when we do come back together, we're both on the same page.
love it, love it. Last kind of big question for you to kinda, like, our parting words. The book goes through 12 different scripts. Yep, 12, well, maybe 10 scripts, and then I'm not sure about Golden Girls and My Sister's Keeper. I don't know if those are scripts or not. But you go through a bunch of different scripts, and then there are, like, subscripts in each chapter. For the next time somebody is on their tiny mirror on the wall that is our phone, you talk about in the book, who's the fairest of them all, and they start spiraling and they start having a moment of either, comparison or like, "Oh, that person doesn't like me because they feel intimidated, or she's just jealous, or they're so catty, or they're so mean," whatever the case is. Any of the scripts you go through, what do you do and what can they do in that moment? Like, 30 seconds, it's just happened. You got 30 seconds to change the trajectory, to change the script. What is your best advice for, like, diffusing the bomb before it goes off?
Turn the mirror back on you and ask yourself, what am I believing about myself right now that's making this feel so
Okay.
personal?
Yeah.
Because just as Taylor Swift says, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me.
Yeah.
I have learned that
Yes.
9 times out of 10, I am feeling insecure, I am feeling small. I am feeling scared. And my first reaction is to be angry at someone else rather than mourn a season that I'm in that's making me feel unloved and unwanted.
Wow. Well, I feel like a Taylor Swift reference was all we were missing to make this the best episode ever. So now, check. We are there. We are there. You are incredible. I could talk to you all day. Let them know where they can find you, this book, any other things you want them to know, this brand new USA Today bestselling book, all the things you want them to know, and where to follow you and get more of you.
You can follow along on Instagram under Raise to Stay. That's where most of us hang out. And then Instagram is Raise to Stay. Facebook is Natalie Runion, Runion. And books are wherever books are sold, primarily Amazon, Books a Million, Christian Book, and Walmart.
Love it. Love it. All right, friends. The book is I Don't Even Like Women and Other Lies That Get in the Way of Sacred Sisterhood. It is out now everywhere books are sold. The brand new USA Today bestselling book. Get this in your hands or the hands of a friend who really needs it. And for now, I want to leave you with these wise words from Natalie. I want you to remember what was said about you is never as powerful as who God says you are and whose you are. His truth throws light on their shade. Don't grow weary in busting through dead places to bring life. Don't stop shining because someone said you shine too brightly. Let people talk and let God defend. Until next time, friends, this is the Mary Morant Show, and welcome to your underestimated season.